Hello everyone. It is Kenyon here. I hope you're all doing well. Definitely don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Thank you. Helps out the algorithm. We are going to start off today's episode of Basketball Rewind Breakdown Edition by going back to the start of this current season. It is the 22-23 NBA season, where Pascal Siakam quoted that he felt like he wanted to improve to become a top 5 player.
I think, again, like those are the conversations that we have, at the end of the season. You got to assess your season and see how you can get better, things that you need to do. I just feel like, it's time to take another step. Like, it's always been that. Like, I've always believed in that, and I've tried every single year to take another step. But I think for me, after the year that I had, I just feel like there's so much things that I could get better on, and for me, the next step, like, I've been all NBA, I've been an all-star. Like, it's just, I want to be, top 5 player in the league. Like, I want to be one of the best, and I would do everything that I can to work towards that.
Immediately after hearing this, there was a ton of typical online back and forth on Twitter, on Facebook, all over the place, whether or not he could be that, whether he could be a top 5 player. And no matter what he said, it didn't matter. He was proclaiming what he wanted, yet some people were suggesting there was no doubt in their mind that he was no better than a top 25 player at best. With people going back and forth, there was a ton of frenzy over what his quote-unquote ranking could be. Now, that being said, ranking Siakam amongst his peers can be a fun exercise, and it's a fun exercise to properly think about and discuss. But with that being said, before we really truly discuss it, before we head into that sort of discussion, we need to go back into the past to provide some context as to why this type of discussion, why the frantic, crazy discussion resulted in such a polarizing manner among Raptors fans early on in this season, and how we got here today. So we start by going back to the infamous bubble series, where the former 27th overall pick had just signed a 4-year max contract in the previous offseason, and was just showing signs of unfortunate significant drop-off in his offensive production heading into the second round of the playoffs, of the bubble playoffs, facing Boston. The Raptors went down 0-2 to start the series, but they were able to fight back, making it a 7-game series overall for one of the most entertaining and, from a tactical standpoint, amazing basketball series that I've ever seen, even though it didn't result in a Raptors win. For Siakam, his bubble performance, just straight up, it was subpar. However, it was his defense that actually kept him on the floor. It was his ability to be able to help blitz opposing ball handlers, to be able to recover within a single play, to be able to combine that, his length, his fluid hip movement, and all of that combined allowed him to provide resistance against the likes of Tatum and Jaylen Brown, the double J's. Immediately in the aftermath of the series, Siakam faced mounting criticism for his performance, with reporters asking hard-hitting questions. They pulled no punches at all.
Yeah, I take a lot of the blame, man. I take a lot of the blame. Just, continue to work. Like, it's a work, it's a learning experience for me. Continue to learn.
How does it feel to feel responsible for this outcome?
Siakam admitted to not having touched a basketball in 3 months heading into the bubble, and questions about his heart and passion for the game began to crackle and pop and burst to the surface as the tension that had built up in the fans' hearts had started to boil over. One of the things that a lot of fans forgot about that time is the restrictive nature of Canada's then lockdown policies that were forced uniformly across the nation. These are the same policies and border restrictions that trapped the Cameroonian forward in the country. And at that time, it was fairly prohibited to be able to even access a gym or anything like that. I heard some fans pointing out that, oh, well, you know what? He should have just broken the rules, which is, in my opinion, a silly suggestion. But on top of that, it's also conveniently sidestepping the fact that there were other Raptors players that faced a ton of media and fan scrutiny, the like, for merely purchasing grocery stores without a mask at the time. As tensions continued to boil over, the ugly side of Toronto sports fandom reared its ugly head, as some quote-unquote fans became racist towards Siakam, including starting multiple petitions to send him home back to quote-unquote Africa, ultimately dehumanizing him as a human being, not just as a player. Heck, even recently there have been people who have come out in the Toronto fan space, in the Toronto fan community, and they have even tried to downplay the impact that type of extremely intense interaction can have on a young black man who is trying to do his best to grow as both a person, a young man, and a player simultaneously. We can only imagine the scrutiny that he would have faced if he would have broken the law. But that's okay, a resurgence happened. Siakam stayed strong and fought through all of the questions about his ability, his passions for the game. He continued this growth through last season. He continued it through the Tampa season, even though it didn't come through with results on the court. It was through last season where he rightfully earned himself all NBA accolades, and that is what prompted Masai to give an end of the season presser outlining his feelings about the former champion.
What that guy went through, we all go through it, and it's not advertised. His is advertised, his is public because he is a public figure. I'm so proud of him. I want that guy on my team. I want that kind of fighter on my team. If you can come back from that in life, you saw it. You saw what people called him, racist. All the things that were said about that guy because of basketball. Yeah, he gets paid, but he's also a human being. Those things crack people, right? And he grew out of it. And to see him on that stage, fight. Fight and fight. Yeah, that's who you want to go to war with, to battle with. I'm proud of him. Incredibly proud of Pascal. And if I can find more Preciouses and more, like Pascals and OGs, trust me, we'll have 15 more of them on this team. We'll continue to pile them up. Those are the players that play in this league, and they play big time.
What is more is Siakam finally had an offseason heading into this current year, to actually work on his game where it was free of COVID restrictions or the need to rehab a shoulder or anything else, just one that was free so he could get back into the lab, work on his craft, and create something new, causing his peers and his coaches to rant and rave about his work ethic throughout the entirety of the summer.
And we got to work, and we've been working ever since, man. We've been working ever since. It's been some tough times in the gym, but he was totally dedicated to it. I mean, hardest working guy I've ever been around, by far. And I've worked with a lot of people. I'm talking about double days, the times that, you guys would lose out early and, to Cleveland, back then. And he would come right away. He would come right away, man. He was like the next day, he would be on a plane.
Pascal? Yeah. Pascal is one of the hardest workers I've ever seen, ever. I don't even think he wakes up in the morning. I don't think he eats breakfast or stretches. He just works out for an hour before practices, and then works out like another hour after practice. I've never seen anything like it, so I think he's gonna be very special coming soon. This is gonna be a really good year for him.
Do you see him at the level of some of the other true superstars in this league?
He can get there. Like I said, this dude works out every day. I've never seen him take a day off. So I come in Saturdays there, Sundays there. So I think he has potential to be like that.
We have to talk about his leadership. And that's one thing that's super important. One thing that people can't say is that he isn't hungry and that he isn't hardworking and that he doesn't value winning.
We put in a lot of work, and when you put in the work, and you have confidence in your work and have confidence that things are gonna happen for you. So I had that confidence from the beginning, but then obviously it grew, with the season and being able to have big games or seeing yourself perform, it gives you a little boost of confidence. But from the beginning, it was always there. The belief was always there.
Siakam's leadership style is quite unorthodox. He tends to reach out to his teammates in silence. He doesn't talk about things. He preaches winning behind the scenes. And if you listen to his interviews, if you listen intently, he preaches the importance of staying grounded. This is something that Lowry preached again and again, the importance of, hey, there are ups and downs throughout different parts of the seasonal journey and just the life journey. Siakam is someone who has embraced the adversity. He's someone who appreciates the journey, and he just keeps working harder and harder. He's someone that you don't expect to change, regardless of the money, regardless of the fame, regardless of the winning. And once he has that feeling, he himself says that he wants to get more.
Once it hits you that you want it, and once you get back to like thinking as like a professional and a guy that always want to get better, the next step is to win it again. It's to go to that level again, like, and that's your goal. Like, it's sweet, but then it kind of goes away, and it's like, okay, like let me try to see if I can get to that level again.
All in all, Siakam doesn't see his success as part of a zero-sum game. He's never been a diva. He's never ruffled a lot of feathers overall. And perhaps people feel like you need to be a diva or you need to ruffle feathers to be a leadership. But for me, I don't know. I'm not so sure. For me, leadership is much more complex and comes in different forms. It comes in the form of leading by example through your work ethic, through empowering other people to rise up, through just being a good person. That's a really good place to start with leadership if we're going to talk about leadership. And within that, being aware that you are a role model for many international prospects.
He's an inspiration for the game. He's an inspiration for basketball in Cameroon and in Africa.
Heading into this year, there were still questions. There were still questions focused on whether or not Siakam was a number one guy before he proclaimed, hey, I want to be a top 5 guy in the NBA. Which means to me that he's willing to work for it. This year hasn't been perfect given the team's current record. Whenever this comes out, it's not a great record. The team overall has been inconsistent and has not performed up to par. But with that being said, answering the question of whether or not Siakam is the guy or not is tough, and to be frank, I don't think that Siakam has actually cracked the top 5 conversation. But with that said, it is in my opinion that he has certainly solidified himself within that 10 to 20 range and has earned and stamped his place amongst other All-NBA or at least borderline All-NBA performers. Let's look into that and let's see if that pans out. We first start off by looking at the stats. Siakam's overall Raptor score has had him placed between 13th and 16th overall as an impact player on the court throughout this entire season. And this very specific statistic is an all-encompassing statistic which uses things like box plus minus, wins above replacement, and other factors to estimate an overall impact that players have when they are on the floor. From there, we turn to the NBA crafted numbers to see his overall offensive rating and how it has ascended. Currently, as of the recording today, when I am recording it, I'm seeing that he is an overall 95th percentile offensive player overall for the season, and he also has a passing rating that puts him in the 88th percentile, all while being an above average defender. And we can see that by looking at this overall score. One of the keys to Siakam's overall play that even his most prominent detractors can't take away from him has been his improvement in the playmaking ability. That combined with his increased ability to get to the basket and penetrate through into the hoop, something that has been sorely needed on this Raptors squad. This includes drawing opposing defenders away as he penetrates, which allows him, with his gravity, to find open teammates. And more often than not, he's not perfect in that area, but he grades out as an above average passer, which we'll get to in a second. He's been very effective while also not having a traditional ISO scoring skill set, so to speak. So as he has built his counters over the years beyond just the spin move, and as that has developed with his overall soccer background, which has had an unorthodox amount of movement, it has been these counters that have been built, and it has been his ability to create something that is so far fairly impactful as an overall offensive weapon. And it has been this that has been backed up by player impact scores and lineup data, which has demonstrated that the Raptors are particularly and most especially effective and better with him on the floor than without. This ability to create gravity is something that can't fully be captured without going to the film. So we begin. We start off the film study by looking at Siakam's ability to create for others using his gravity in the mid-range on drives. And it's this threat of his isolation combined with the efficiency that he does it with, which demands attention from other defenders. And as that happens, it leads to him producing at a fairly solid 1.21 points per possession, especially in this particular type of play type. Overall, his stats rank him in the 80th percentile for isolation efficiency for this type of thing. And thus, it's not really surprising, given the lack of dynamic scorers that the Raptors have, that they use him and sometimes even overuse this type of play type action with Siakam at the center of it. Something that ball movement and other things can get to in a better way in the future, and something that I would like to see the Raptors get into, but we will talk about that in another video. Anyways, on the offensive end of the ball, there's always been questions about Siakam's ability to be a primary weapon that drives winning. I think that we have yet to see that fully manifest because the Raptors do not have a team fully capable of making use of his gifts, especially those gifts that reside in his playmaking and other aspects of his game. We just simply lack that. Okay, so with that being said, we now go to the playmaking. Let me be clear. Ball movement is very key to the Raptors and should be very key. When they don't move the ball, they don't do as well. And when they move the ball and they get current actions, the ball hums. Some people have described it as having energy, and as energy moves and is not necessarily created, but is built up within these actions, it leads to good things and it leads to an increase in efficiency. I would like to see Siakam in a slightly lower efficiency or usage role, and I would say that that would probably lead to an uptick in his efficiency across the board, and as well as help others as well. I don't think that this is solely on Siakam. I think that this is partially on coaching and roster construction. The point is, right now, Siakam provides attention, and as his playmaking vision and as his capabilities have developed and continue to develop, his teammates have actually become beneficiaries of these actions. Whether it be him going downhill, dumping it off to Barnes or OG or other players, we tend to see him in different actions. The best action that I've seen is these 3-man actions with Barnes as a roll man, as him as a popper, with other ball handlers handling the ball, where you're getting these different players getting put in their best positions, at least as currently development timelines have dictated. This allows both Barnes and Siakam, the 2-point forwards who are really good at playmaking on the Raptors, to be able to spray passes out to different parts of the court, to be able to be very dangerous in their best areas on the court right now. And it has become a very dangerous new wrinkle since January that the Raptors have injected into their offense, which has kept Barnes engaged, which has allowed Siakam to taper down his usage ever so slightly, giving him a little bit of new life moving into the next part or the final part of the season. Siakam overall has shown a willingness to be able to pass more often than not, and being both a willing and capable distributor who is routinely making good plays in and out. Yes, there does need to be steps forward, but he has made the biggest step forward in this area of his game since the bubble, and we have seen that with the efficiency growing in this area. To me, his drives remind me of a cross between Lamar Odom with his ability to knife through the lane and pass, and at times Scottie Pippen with his ability to penetrate the lane. These type of opportunities have always had the biggest magnitude of impact when Siakam was the one that initiates the offense early instead of in delayed actions. Interestingly, it is Siakam's craftiness which is what he relies on the most, with his litany of jukes and spins and counters that he has created over the time. His ability to show off his improved handle, which before a lot of defenders got under. Now, is it a perfect handle? Absolutely not, but he has improved in this area. Siakam remains very deadly in transition opportunities, which as of the filming of this video It makes up 15.6% of his possessions, and it's these actions that he is able to score at a rate of 60, almost 61%. All in all, the team, the Raptors, are 8.6 points better with him on the court rather than off. By comparison, and I'm not comparing him to this player, one of the best players in transition, Giannis Antetokounmpo, has been known for his deadliness in that area. And while the scoring rate and the points per possession are similar, they are less. He scores 58.2% of the time on these type of possessions, and instead of 1.21 points per possession, he's scoring less at 1.13. Now, again, like I said, clearly I am not saying he is better than Giannis. I'm not comparing him directly to Giannis, but I'm showing in these type of play types, this is where he has learned and earned the ability to thrive. He has also become, like I keep suggesting, a master of the mid-range, with his best areas of the court being displayed in this interactive chart above. For comparison, we can look and see how Barnes and OG compare in those areas, and yes, they are developing, but it is important to show that current difference that exists and the gap that they have to close to get there. Will they get there? Absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind, especially that Barnes will blow past Siakam in time. But currently, this is where the difference exists. This is backed up by B-Ball Index. We can look and see his overall impact metrics additionally that we haven't covered yet and compare them to wings that are similar in the league. This goes for if we compare him to Jaylen Brown or Anthony Davis, who at times have been used by other people to compare to Siakam. So, looking at this overall chart, what stands out to me is his mid-range creation. That, alongside with his playmaking talent, his mid-range talent appears to be one that has very few holes in it, except for his ability to make shots in the mid-range, of course. But the quality that he's able to make, his overall, just prowess as a mid-range pull-up talent. Again, pull-ups are tougher shots. His ability to be able to utilize a floater or different types of hooks in that area. And overall, his shot creation has put him in places where it's usually typically a 75th percentile outcome or in the 90s percentile outcome. We compare this to others. And we look at Jaylen Brown, who has a lot more spacing on his team to be able to make those shots. And again, spacing that has been shrinked for the Raptors as their overall team three-point struggles have been on display. Again, since the 9-game stretch, it has been down. And the team has lost a valuable three-point threat. You can only imagine if this was improved. So now as we look towards the future of the rest of the year and beyond, we can quibble about his ranking, go back and forth, say, oh, he's not a top 5 player, and I won't necessarily dispute that. But with that being said, again, I think that all of the metrics combined would put him in the 12 to 17 range, just for argument's sake. I'm curious what you all think down below in the comments again. But again, this would put him at minimum as a borderline All-NBA player. As for questions about him being a Batman or a Robin, a number 1 or a number 2 on a championship squad, well, we already know. Yes, it's a tough question to answer right now. And I can't say whether he is for sure a number 1 until we have for certain built around him, which ironically would build around Barnes because they have a similar skill set. But with that being said, we know that he has been a number 2 on a championship squad. And to paraphrase Samson Folk, guys who are number 2 on a championship are oftentimes just as hard to find as number 1 guys. Regardless of what happens to Siakam, I expect him to be part of the Raptors' future moving forward. And now with all that being said, I hope that you've enjoyed this nuanced breakdown that gave a little bit of context as to how we got here in terms of the Siakam timeline and discussion, with an attempt to define Siakam's value. And if you enjoyed this type of video, definitely help me out. Let me know by giving me a like, a subscribe, comment down below. Give me some feedback. Let's have a conversation about this. If there's other players that you want me to cover, whether it's Raptors or otherwise, let me know. Share these videos, and until next time, take care, stay safe, stay blessed, and peace.